So and tell everybody about my friend and my guest today. I'm so excited, Michael Childress.
Right.
And just to give you a backstory on Mike, so I would walk every morning,
Right.
early in the morning down the bike path on the beach,
Right.
And you'd be walking by, and we knew each other because we're in this secret club together,
Right.
and we would fist bump.
We would.
We'd go, "Hey, Mike!"
We would.
During the pandemic,
Right.
Right.
It's kind of when it started.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
And then I remember, I would go, I'd be gone for months at a time
Right.
in our house in Lahaina.
Right.
Then we would talk about how was it, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, and I'm always building and working on it.
Right. Exactly.
And then I think I had just come back.
You talked about kissing the ground when you were finished.
That's right.
Yeah.
So because me and my father had been building this place for over 20 years.
Right.
It was just a house with some little units on it. And every time I would be there, before I left to go anywhere, I would kneel and say a prayer, how grateful I was
Right.
to have this incredible journey with my dad and my mom and him, my son and my wife,
Right.
building this paradise.
Right.
And I stopped doing it for a while. I kind of got complacent, and everything sort of becomes regular, I guess.
Sure.
And then the last time I was there, I was leaving, and I got on my hands and knees. I said, I haven't said any kind of a gratitude prayer for this in a long time, probably years. And I had gotten to this place where my buddy Ray Mickshaw, Ray.
Sure.
Ray'd given me this carving to hang in there
Oh,
because
wow.
he came over and stayed with me for a while.
Yeah.
And I remember I was just going, I couldn't find a place to hang it. You get everything sort of perfect. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And I called my wife, April, and I said, I think we're done.
Wow.
She goes, what are you talking about? I go, I think we're done.
Complete.
She goes, why? And I go, I can't find a place to even hang this. I go, everything's perfect.
Wow.
And so the next morning she called me. She said, you've got your Ubers out there. And I decided to say a prayer.
Right.
And I looked around at everything.
Right.
So grateful for the journey I've gone on.
Right.
I come home, the fucking place burns
Burns to the
down.
ground.
And I tell Mike the story.
Right.
And I remember, I'll never forget what he said, because I had like tears in my eyes, right?
Right.
And you go, wow, your God's got a funny sense of humor.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
And what's amazing is but the next thing that you said was, I'm
Right.
going to walk you through this.
I can help you with this. Yeah.
And I didn't even know what you did. I
Right.
didn't know what you were talking about.
I know.
And tell me,
Most people don't.
a little bit what you do exactly.
Yeah, well, so some people call me a disaster attorney. Some people call me a disaster of an attorney. But basically, for 44 years, I've been suing insurance companies when they don't pay people. And that started out back in Chicago. And it wasn't even a full-time job because insurance companies paid back then.
Oh, really?
And so most of my cases I represented every Greek, Italian, and Jewish restaurateur in the city of Chicago at some time or another because they were accused of burning down their places.
Really?
So they were all arson and fraud
Really?
claims. Yeah.
Was that true?
Well, sometimes. Sometimes they were getting burned out by their competition.
Right.
Sometimes they were getting burned out by their landlords. Sometimes they were getting burned out
So
by...
it was happening, arson then.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is Chicago.
Yeah.
And, restaurant fires are kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Everybody's seen The Sopranos where they burnt out the guy's restaurant.
Yeah, that's right.
That kind of thing absolutely happened. I had a number of clients that were paisano types.
Wow.
I represented I was in court because the feds had come in and grabbed some insurance money from my client. They were Colombian and they had a big dance hall. And I'm jumping up and down before the judge, and the judge happened to be the federal judge that presided over my wedding. And so I was not really allowed to appear before him. And he goes,
wow.
Mike, what are you doing here? And I said, well, Your Honor, I'm not here officially, but the federal government came in and took my client's money. It's just outrageous. And then I walk outside, and on the front page of the Chicago Sun-Times is an FBI surveillance photo of my client out in Lake Michigan with a guy named or Moogla, or Tony the Camel Moogless.
Oh,
And they've got stacks of cocaine sitting on their yacht, and
holy shit.
yeah. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. Anyway, so what I do is I help people and businesses after there's been property damage, and I've been doing it all over the country for a very long time. And so it's everything from hurricanes in Florida and Texas, and floods in the Midwest, and Hurricane Sandy. Fires, of course, everywhere, whether they be urban fires or wildfires, and then earthquakes. And my first disaster was in 1992, Hurricane Andrew down in Miami and Homestead, Florida.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah. And so that started it. So around the mid 90s, the insurance industry stopped paying claims. They just unilateral, and there's a whole story behind it.
Why?
Well documented. Well, money, of course.
I mean, but how can they all of a sudden stop though?
Well, so
Want a donut?
Yeah.
I can't ever read this.
Yeah. So in the mid 90s, Allstate Insurance, from headquartered outside of Chicago, and State Farm, headquartered in Central Illinois, hired McKinsey Consulting to because they were not making enough money. They decided, and McKinsey came up with a 1,000-tile PowerPoint presentation on how they could reorganize things. And I have the PowerPoint presentation.
Wow.
How they could reorganize things in order to make more money. And what it amounted to was really just changing how they interpreted the policy in absurd ways. Things that were hardcore, letter of the law, embedded adjusting practices that everybody agreed to, suddenly were up in the air, and were different, and were changed. And the protocol they came up with was brilliant, because it involved marketing against policyholders, against public adjusters, against policyholder lawyers. It involved a legislative initiative. It involved getting judges in the right positions. It was
How was that done? How does
money? I mean, you pay for it.
Really?
Yeah. One of the best examples I can give you is State Farm had a $430 million class action judgment against them for using auto parts that were secondhand and saying that they were new. And the case went up to the Illinois Supreme Court, and State Farm stalled until there was an election period, and Supreme Court judges in Illinois are elected. They put $1 million into the campaign of this one guy who got in there and reversed it.
So just like anything, that's just the way it always works.
It's the way of the world. It didn't used to work like that.
Right.
That started in the mid 90s, and so in the mid 90s, then suddenly I was full time busy. I had a law firm in Chicago with 25 lawyers, and we had offices in Miami, Dallas, Denver, L.A., Chicago, and we responded to the earthquakes in New Zealand, and so we had offices in Christchurch and Brisbane, and just traveling around the world to do this.
I mean, that's pretty exciting too.
It's fun,
right?
Kind of the way I came up with it. I was newly sober.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't even know if I wanted to be a lawyer anymore. I wasn't even
really
sure. Yeah, I wasn't sure I could, because we're trying to love and tolerance is our code thing,
right?
And that was not how I litigated. I was
really.
I was kind of a violent litigator. I mean, I looked at everything like a football game, and so like I would physically confront my opposition.
Really?
Yeah. One of the stories.
This is before sobriety, though.
And during sobriety, I was a slow learner. I just.
What did you do? Like, what did he?
Well, I mean, I would get very close to people. I'd be standing and I'd go, and make them flinch, or like we'd be standing before the judge, and I'd lean in and go, "Where the fuck did you get that suit?"
It's great
said,
intimidation.
There's a little spot in the back here.
It's like shit talking on
100%.
Oh my
100%.
God.
While the judge is talking to us, I'm just, I'd walk up to them. They'd be sitting in court before the case, and I would have some bone to pick with them, and I would come up. I'd sit in the aisle behind them, and I'd lean over and go, "I am gonna fucking kill you if you do it." I was, you know,
That's incredible.
I was unmedicated. And, yeah, so sober, I had this case versus Lloyd's of London, and this lawyer had litigated with us for 4 years in federal court, knowing that the court didn't have jurisdiction. And right when we're about to get to trial, he gets the case dismissed. I have to start over. And so he comes over to my office to try to settle the case rather than start over. And he's sitting in my office, and he's being just a total dickwad. He basically was gloating. Right. And so I said, get the fuck out of here. I'm not going to listen to this shit. And he's like sitting there. I said, get the fuck out of here now. And he wouldn't leave. And he was a big guy. And I walked up behind him and pulled the chair out from under him and dumped him on the floor. Oh my God. And then I kind of kicked him. I said, get the fuck out of here. I mean, I was maybe a year sober.
I mean, I would never know you like that.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
My wife just thinks you're the sweetest person there is.
You know.
She always says stuff. She go, look at his eyes. You know, he's got the nicest eyes.
It's been slow. Let me say, it's been slow. So the rest of the story is, so I end up litigating the case. I end up in London, and I've got to take the deposition of his client. And his client was a guy about my age, and he had prepared his client for this big asshole, angry, violent asshole. Right. And as I'm on my way to take the deposition, I'm in a full suit, raincoat, briefcase. I'm walking down the street, and there's this cabbie hanging out of his cab with his arm hanging over. And as I walk up to him, he points at the door and goes, AA? And I'm like, what do I got a sign on? What the fuck? Right? I go, okay, I'm game. I walked in, there was an AA meeting going on.
Wow.
And I went in and I attended the meeting. And and it kind of changed the, that morning I was jet lagged. I was miserable. I was a little scared. I didn't know how it was going to go. I was not looking forward to seeing my opposition because I was a little embarrassed about having dumped it. And the last time I had seen him, I had thrown him on the ground. Not really
That's amazing.
Great situation to have a rapport in. Anyway, I go to the deposition. Me and his client start talking. It's like two old friends.
Wow.
And we eventually go off the record. And over his objection, and his client goes, "Shut up, we're talking here."
Yeah.
And so we go off the record. We settle the case, and then he takes me on a tour of Lloyd's of London.
No shit.
Which was amazing. Lloyd's, they were the people that insured the Titanic when it went down.
Oh.
And in the atrium of they've got a 9-story building, and it's like a trading floor all the way up, and there's guys sitting around, kind of looking at racing forms, except they're forms to take risk on insurance risks all over the world, and they're just sitting there drinking coffee, talking shit, eating donuts. And people are walking around, and they, you want to insure an oil plant in India? Yeah, sure, we're in for that. And that's what they're all sitting there doing. After that, he took me out and bought me a barrister's outfit.
No kidding.
He said, counselor, you deserve a proper outfit. You're here, and
wow,
yeah. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I know. It was 100% the program. So.
And how does it work? I mean, how does it work now? I mean, from before sobriety to now, you're trying the case.
Yeah.
You've got to shift gears. And how can you still have the sort of that impact or get the win? How do you do that?
Well, so I mean that's what I had to learn, and it took me a long, between years 5 and 15, I was traveling a lot, and my sponsor had moved away, and I was like, I kind of got this.
Yeah.
I'm smart. Right. And so I kind of sponsored myself, which is the ism. And that's when I was doing all this wayward craziness. And at about 15 years, I was so scared and out of my mind. I got a sponsor, and he took me back to the third step. Mm-hmm. Right. And we did a real third step. The first time around, I did it as best I could, but we did a real third step, and I really started. I realized that though I had stayed sober for 15 years, I had always kept one foot out.
Right.
I had not ever fully worked the program fully to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
I had not really tried. I had let it work me, and you know, I mean, it saved my life, saved my marriage, saved my family. I mean, I
Yeah.
had incredible benefit, saved my job, allowed me to travel the world. You know, allowed me basically. I used to think that I was only limited by what I could think. You know, if I would,
Yeah.
I could really do anything that I came up with. I would, you know, like going to New Zealand and responding to the earthquakes. You know, a lawyer from outside of Chicago is not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah, that's wild.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then what's happening with?
So I litigate with love is what I do now.
Yeah, that was my question.
It's a totally different point of view. I actually, with my opposition, I have some compassion for them. I help them. I had a case in New York City last April. We were on trial in the same building where Trump was getting tried last April, and my opposition was the nastiest attorney I had ever opposed. This guy was just out of his fucking mind, and he thought I was the guy who had dumped the guy on the floor. And I mean, I had kind of a reputation for being nuts. Like people would come over to my office for depositions and they'd start talking some smack, and I would just like, we're not doing this. Get out of here. I'm done. I'm going to lunch. Deposition is over. I all the time would do that kind of stuff. And I would, like crack. It was much worse when I was out there, because I never came into the office not massively hungover,
right.
for like the last 10 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you have a story. I asked you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember. I was trying to tell Jim.
Yeah.
I think was I telling you yesterday, Jim, about the impaling?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What was...
So,
because I love these tales of debauchery.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. And, I can tell you the city of living in Chicago from the age of 20 to 35, it is the most wonderful place on earth for a young man that wants to get into trouble. I mean, it is everywhere. I mean, me and my brothers lived downtown, and we would always live in really rough neighborhoods because what we were doing compared to what was going on in the neighborhood was nothing. And so, cops would come in and take care of us. They're selling crack across the street and whatnot. And you also got great space for cheap.
Right.
And we didn't care. And we would like organize the neighborhood. The guys sitting at the end of the street burning wood in a can, drinking. We'd go down there and drink with them, and we'd give them each like $5, and we would go and like strip buildings of their sconces, of the wood beams, of the panel doors. We were just hanging out in the hood.
Right.
So, one of my strategies, my managing strategies, because I kind of, it was the last 10 years were ugly and getting worse. I reached the point where, the fuck it point.
Yeah.
Where you're just, every day you got the monkey on your back. You're trying to be good. You're trying to stop. And every day you would fuck up.
Yeah.
Right. And so my solution, keen alcoholic thinking, I thought I would get married. And if I got married and I married a woman with a kid, I would instantly be a father and a husband, and I would be good.
Ready made.
There was no basis for that belief at all because I had no,
How old were you?
I was 35.
Oh, wow.
I was 35. Yeah. Yeah. So I got to 35. I noticed that, all the people I used to party with were married with kids and not around. And I was hanging out with 20-year-olds and it was getting worse and worse and worse. In my office, they would hide cocaine on my desk every day. So they called it feeding the bear.
No way.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And I'd come in like around 2:30 in the afternoon, like, how are we gonna find it? Where is it? Because they knew if they gave me one line, it was on, and we were out.
That's
right,
crazy.
Right. So I mean, the birth of both of my kids, I looked at as an opportunity because my wife's in the hospital, so I went out. She actually came home from the hospital one of the times. They let her out too early, and she's like, "Where are you?" And I'd been out like 2 days. she's calling a friend of mine, and I'm at his place, and it's like 5 a.m. We've been up all night. Tell her I'm out here. Anyway, so I married a woman that partied like I did. Actually, she was from California.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's little, and I could not understand how she was keeping up with me. I mean, it was killing me. And she's like 5'2", 100 pounds, and this woman can drink and do drugs, and she magically could stop when she got pregnant. We had 2 kids, and so and after I got married, this whole theory that I would become a husband and a father, not so much. I didn't even stop for a second. I was a fully evolved male in downtown Chicago. I had my own house. I really didn't need a wife and kid,
Right.
and there was something to do every single night and whatnot. And so our biggest issue, we had a lot of power battles in the beginning because she had this idea that if she was making dinner, I should be home to eat it. And I kind of misled her because she'd say, "When are you going to be home?" And I would tell her, and then I'd miss it like sometimes by a day or 2 days. The problem is I lived a 15-minute walk from my office, and it was on the north side of Chicago. And if I ended up at a bar or restaurant north of where I lived, who knows
Right.
when I'm getting back. So this one night, we had friends in town from California. We had gone to a Cubs game, and Cubs games were always a 16-ounce beer an inning events.
Oh.
And so we did the full 9 innings of 16-ounce beers, and then went out for Jell-O shots. And I was only like 5 blocks from my house. I was supposed to be meeting her at this festival, and I was like 3 blocks away pounding shots and dancing. and so she was friends with my friends who were in town from California, and she found me, and basically gave me a ration of shit and told me I had to go home. And she's there with the baby, and
Oh, man.
in public, and so I said, okay, we'll go home. So I invited the whole party home, and on my way home, I grabbed an 8-ball of Coke, and
This is my attorney.
and went into the house, threw the Coke on the dining room table, walked out the back door, and climbed the tree. People always say, "Why did you climb the tree?" And it seemed like a good idea. I like climbing things. I like getting high. Like me and my brothers made it a mission to get on top of all the buildings that we had offices in. We got on top of the Hancock building, 100 stories up.
Wow.
It's windy as fuck up there. I mean, you think you're going to get blown off.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So,
Wait, why did you climb the tree?
well, to get away from her. To get away from her.
You just threw the Coke in and said, "I'm out of here."
And I walked through the back, out the back door. It's in my backyard.
Right.
And so I climbed the tree, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just really pissed, and so I'm trying to figure out how to get. I was going to swing from the tree to our upstairs balcony, so that I could go into the bedroom and not talk to her.
Oh, my God.
I had some drugs in the bedroom. I didn't want to, and so. And I had climbed off the tree onto the roof, and I had almost jumped the L tracks. The elevated train tracks was right next door, and I was kind of seeing if I could jump off the roof onto the train tracks.
And then where were you going to go?
I had no plan. I didn't know. It's just I was trying to do. I was trying to get people to feel sorry for me, which was like half my life. So anyway, as I was sitting there in the tree and swinging, the branch broke. I fell 2 stories and impaled myself on a wrought iron fence. I took 9 inches. The only place I could take 9 inches in my ass. Went right up my ass. Sheared my pelvis in half. One hit me on my back and went up, and the other one hit me in the elbow. And
Holy shit!
And when I landed, I was pissed. I was like,
So you're on this fence?
yeah, and because I usually land on. I mean, I fall well generally, and so I expected to land on my feet, and so I'm literally sitting here like this. And I'm like, fuck, and trying to think of my next move, and I don't realize I'm impaled at that point.
Oh, my God.
And I kind of Oh. And so I lift myself off the fence,
Oh my God.
and I'm not going to ask for help. Fuck that, you know.
Yeah.
I pull the spear tips out of my body, throw them on the ground. I sit for a minute and try to figure out my next move. And clearly my next move is not to walk in and admit defeat. My next move is to tiptoe past the windows and go out and hail a cab to get to the hospital to get fixed up, to come back, to be the conquering. Now, will somebody give me some fucking sympathy? That was my plan.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, at the hospital, they found the fractured pelvis and four surgeries and 14 days later, I walked out of the hospital.
Jesus Christ. I didn't get the details. I've never
Yeah.
gotten this is like the details of the story.
Yeah, and you know, that was the first time in a long time that I had been cleaned up. You know, they
Right.
had me on morphine, and I did not particularly like that. You know, I always looked at, whenever doctors would give you drugs for your pain,
Yeah.
I would always save them
Right.
to party with.
Right.
You don't want to waste them on your pain.
Yeah. Stockpiling.
Exactly. And so, yeah, so I was stuck at home, and I'm sitting at home, and I'm like, I wonder what happened to that fucking 8-ball. Well, my buddies had stayed up and had held a vigil for me,
Right.
right? And I wouldn't let anybody call my wife, because my plan was to try to talk my way into getting home, and I almost had it. And she then shows up in the wait before they're going to take me up for surgery, and she goes, "Did you tell them about the cocaine in your system?" I said, "That is none of your fucking business." She said, "I'm going to tell them." I said, "You tell them when we're done. We're absolutely done. You will not be flushing my legal career. If anybody's flushing my legal career, I'm flushing my legal career. You get out of here. Leave me alone."
Wow.
Right? And I didn't tell them. Probably could have died because of that. You know,
Yeah.
anesthesia.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So,
And did you get sober after that?
well, that was 1989. So we had gotten married July 1st, 1989. That was September 22nd, 1989. The marriage was going great.
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't get sober till 97. I had
Wow.
8
So you
more
had
years.
more to,
I
you
had
had
8
more
more
to go.
I had 8 more
after
years.
that. After all that.
You would have thought.
Yeah.
But after I got my 8-ball back and finished that, I mean, I left that on the table. That was my plan.
What do you think though? Because I always find that to be very fascinating. Everybody has a different bottom,
right? Yeah.
And that's kind of like my story too. My bottom wasn't bad. When I finally got sober, it was nothing.
It was not the worst bottom I had had.
No, I had
Yeah.
way worse. Like, this is gnarly.
It was gnarly.
I can't imagine anything getting much gnarlier than that, right?
Yeah.
And then what was it? When was that window that opened, or the moment of clarity? What was it that said,
Yeah,
that took you where you said, fuck it, I can't do this anymore?
and I think physical health, I took for granted, and I think that when people hit bottom, it's something that matters to them, and you never know what's really going to matter to them.
Right.
Right. And what mattered to me was my kids.
Wow.
And my marriage.
Yeah.
Turns out, what did it for me. So me and my wife continued to descend into hell, and October, Halloween, 1997, we had made a pact not to do cocaine.
You and your wife.
Me and my wife.
Oh, wow.
And she did it, and I caught her.
Really?
Now, I had done it too, but she didn't catch me. And so, self-righteous Mike, and I'm not sure that I was more angry that she didn't share it with me or that she had violated our agreement. I really didn't give a fuck about the agreement, but I just wanted to be self-righteous. And so I managed to not drink for 2 days. And I was like,
Oh, yeah.
I'd come home and she'd be drunk and I'd start railing her, and and so I came home one night and she was making me my favorite meal, which are pulled pork tacos by Rick Bayless, and she had omitted the toasted almonds. And you can't really eat a pulled pork taco without toasted almonds, right?
Right.
And so I go nuts, and I said, I'm sure you can turn this into some sort of shit. And I fell asleep, woke up Monday Night Football. And when I woke up, she was gone, taking the kids. And she was drunk.
Wow.
And it was raining, and there was a sheet of ice, and I had no idea where she went. And that was the second time she had pulled this. The first time was in Chicago.
How old were the kids?
My son was almost one. Or no, he was one, just one.
Oh, babies.
Yeah. My daughter was 7.
Wow.
And then our oldest was 12. Yeah. And I had no idea where they were. And she had gone to a abuse shelter. Now, we had, since the first time she did it, we had moved to the suburbs, and you don't really need to abuse anybody. Not that I wasn't abusive. Don't get me wrong. I was
Right.
I was a walking abuse. But abuse shelters in the suburbs were much more willing to accept people than you didn't have to have a physical injury in order to be accepted there. And so she went there, and eventually she signed an affidavit saying I was a danger to myself and to them. And the sheriffs came and escorted me from my home, giving me 15 minutes to pack all my worldly belongings, which I did with great aplomb. Rather than using the suitcases, the many suitcases we had, I put them in, garbage bags and walked out, to the greatest,
Right.
would somebody feel bad for me, please? Right. And so, and I thought I had a drug problem, not an alcohol problem.
Right.
Though she does point out that in 1990, I really started getting into the cocaine heavy because I kept passing out and like I would almost hit my head on the bathtub, or I'd be standing there like urinating and then out. It just complete
A mess.
Yeah. And many blackout, waking blackouts
Yep.
and brownouts, and I'd wake up every day like, oh fuck, what did I say? What did I do? And people would act like they knew me, and I had no idea who they were. A lot.
Yeah.
I'd walk into bars. Oh,
Right. This whole other secret life.
right. And I'm like, do I know you?
Yeah, I remember that. That's funny you said that.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So, so she wouldn't let me see my kids. She said that I had to get treatment. I had to get help, whatever help was. And so my mom, coincidentally, is a psychologist and had just done, as part of her doctoral program, an assessment of all of the treatment centers in the city of Chicago. And so she said, well, you need to go to rehab. And I said, I do not. And I hung up on her. Then I called her back and I said, if I had to go to rehab, which one would you suggest? And so, then my wife is saying, you need to get help. So I went over to get assessed.
Right.
And then I declared that I had gotten help. Right.
Right.
And so when I'm getting the assessment, they're like, and of course I lied about my usage, and they said you really need to go away for at least a 30-day treatment. And I'm like, couldn't I do a little outpatient? You don't understand. I'm a very busy person.
Yeah.
I have a business. I'm the
yeah.
boss. I can't. There's no way the world can survive without me.
Right.
Right? The world's going to stop
That's
turning, right? I don't have time for this shit. And they said, Mr. Childress, we think you're pretty good at managing things, and we wouldn't want to waste your money because we think you just manage this. And I was like, well, yes, I am very good at managing things. Thank you. I was very proud of being called a good manager. And they said, so, they're trying to send me to Minnesota. It was Hazelden.
Okay.
And it was November. And I'm like, there's no way I want to go to Minnesota in November. It's just too cold. And so they put me in this little room and, this little waiting area. I said, well, why don't you think about it? We really think you'd benefit from that. And I'm sitting there and my mind is racing. I'm thinking about bolting, just running.
Yeah.
But I, in my heart of hearts knew that, and I was really sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
The whole waking up every day just crushed, morally crushed, spiritually crushed, although I didn't know that was my problem at the time. And I see this little picture book, and it's got palm trees, and it's got a fountain, and they come back, and I go, where's that? They said, well, that's our facility in Palm Springs. I said, can I go there? And he said, sure. So, I told everybody I'm going to Palm Springs for rehab. And they're like, you are not. You are not. And, on the plane on the way down, I'm like, man, I could rent a car and go down to the Keys and hang out for 30 days. Nobody would know. Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, and I had done that just earlier that year. We had good friends of mine had gotten married in the Keys, and we had gone down, and we ended up inviting all the strippers to the wedding on the beach, and so we had FedExed cocaine from Seattle, Washington, to us, and like we're at the FedEx.
This is crazy.
Every fucking like 5 times a day. You got our package. You got our package. Right? We're leaving town in 2 days.
Oh yeah.
Right? And it ended up not coming in time, so we went up to South Beach and drove back and picked it up.
Oh.
It's like
Not letting that go.
No, exactly.
So then, did it stick when you did that?
So
in Palm Springs.
So in Palm Springs, I was, I am a mission-oriented human being, and I'm a very competitive person, and I was not going to lose. And my mission was to get my stuff back. She had changed the locks. She had the house, the cars, the kids, everything. And she had, sued me for divorce and whatnot. And so we were getting ready to have a big battle. I'm a trial lawyer, so
yeah,
I like my odds.
Right.
Plus, I'm going to gather evidence on her use and abuse and fucking take the kids and kill her. It was my plan.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's have a basis for a good, strong marriage. Right? And so what? I'm going to extort her or pressure her into coming back, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was fucked up. So I decided to do rehab like the good student that I am, and I took copious notes, and and I had to admit I was feeling better, and I lost a bunch of weight and whatnot. And they would take us to these A meetings, and what I had said to the guy that dropped me off at the airport on the way, I said, if they think they're going to get any of that 12-step shit into me, I am not doing it. Right?
Yeah.
I was solidly against it. I only went to meetings because it got me off the campus. I would go in. I would leave before they started.
Yeah.
I'd hang out, get back on the bus, go back. I was not doing any of that. Luckily, I didn't have any place to live. She had thrown me out. So when I'm coming back from Florida, I end up in a halfway house.
Oh, wow.
In Chicago. Yeah. Yeah. And,
So you're doing it, though, at this point. So you're in. You know what I mean?
In my brain, I was not in.
You're not in, but I mean,
But I really had no choice.
You went to treatment in Palm Springs, and now you're in sober living, right?
For 4 months.
Wow.
With 3 other guys living in a room. My closet is that big, and I'm a trial lawyer. I'm wearing suits every day.
Right.
I mean,
that's an odd fit, but isn't it funny how we all fit?
Indeed. And so, I'm really good at systems and figuring out what's going on. So I figured out they had a curfew. You had to be back there to the halfway house by 5:30 at night, but they didn't care when you left in the morning. And so I was waking up like at 3:30 and leaving and going. There was an all-night gym that I was a member of, and so I'd go and I worked out. And,
right.
And then I'd hit a meeting, like a 6 o'clock meeting before I'd go to work, and because I had to do it to stay in the program.
Yeah.
But I was not. I got a sponsor the very last. If they told me if I didn't get a sponsor, they'd throw me out of the program. So I got a sponsor the last day, and my the way I picked this sponsor is next guy that speaks in this meeting. He's my sponsor. I'm going to ask him.
Wow.
And I asked him, and talk about a higher power. This guy was perfect for me. We came from the same little area west of Chicago. We knew people in common. And I would always, and he was a bigger fuck up than I was, I thought.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, if this guy can get sober, maybe I can get sober.
Wow.
And he saved my life, and
that was in 90?
97.
So that's 97.
Yeah.
And what happened to your wife at that time?
So I'm living in the halfway house. She's living in our I had 6,000 square feet and 5 acres and, creeks and, I had a big spread. She's got all that. And and I'm being a good little boy and coming out and visiting the kids. And like when I first got back, we went to get a Christmas tree. She wouldn't let me ride in the front of the car. She made me ride in the back. I mean, in the way back,
Right.
you know, where the tree was.
Right.
Right. And so I'm complying because I'm going to do whatever I can to get the upper hand here.
Wow, you're still going for the upper hand.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. 100
Not get the family back, just win.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. You know, and I get her back into bed, and, you know, and I am strategically, I am just complying. And this AA stuff is just a means to an end.
Right.
Right. And that goes on for 9 months. And she says, and I had talked her into getting rid of her therapist and her lawyer, firing her lawyer. And I was going to go back. And the day she was supposed to do that, I get a message she leaves a message on my phone machine. I'm not doing it. I'm going through with the divorce. It's over. Don't call me.
Wow.
We're done. And it was at that point that I surrendered and really started doing AA.
Wow.
You know, when I literally had no other choice. Now,
Yeah, where are you now then? So
I moved out of the halfway house and I moved into a building right next door because I was afraid to get too far away.
Yeah.
You know, I knew how to party in Chicago.
Yeah.
I did not know how to live sober in Chicago. And, you know, I really didn't like the meetings.
is she so are you divorced or not?
No, we're completely separated. So we're going to court for the divorce, and two guys from asked if I need help, and I said, sure. And so I met with them, and they said, Mike, do you want to stay married? And I said, I do. And they said, well, you got to quit fighting. And I really didn't know what that meant. Fighting? Fighting's what I do. I'm good at fighting. Are you kidding? You're going to take away my best skill? They go, well, I said, I can win. He said, well, we don't know what you mean by win, but we're pretty sure you won't be married. And I said, so what do I do? They said, just surrender, dude. Just give her everything.
Right.
And so I went in and I fired my lawyer, and she goes, you can't fire me. And I said, I surrender. She can have everything. I'm done.
Wow.
And they insisted on going through the process and the mediation process. So we're at mediation, and the mediator goes, okay, now the rough part, we got to decide how to split it up. And I go, oh, no, that's not a problem. She can have everything. And he looks at her, and she goes, no fucking way. He's got to take half.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, do you see how crazy this woman is? I can't even give her everything. Are you kidding me? What an asshole. So, unbeknownst to me, she had started going to AA.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And she never told me. I got my year. She had started.
Wait, so then let me ask you this, because this is where I'm confused. Is this your wife that we played pickleball with?
Yeah.
She's still with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
For some reason, I always thought that was your second wife, because
Oh,
I've heard your story.
No, that's.
Holy
Yeah.
shit, that's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, no credit to me.
Wow.
Yeah. We stayed married.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And what's your life like with her now?
You know, it's completely transformed. So I turned 70 on Tuesday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. And you know, I was like, well, what do you think, honey? The other day we were talking, and she goes, man, I just feel so lucky. I didn't think we were going to make it.
Wow.
You know?
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Yeah, we're very close. We love each other. We like each other. We spend a lot of time traveling together. We're a pretty good fit, turns out, when you get rid of all the drama and alcohol and drugs, and we're pretty aligned on most everything. You know, during the course of recovery, I've started noticing how smart she is, and how wise she is. Right. And that was all like problematic for me before. You know, the way she would approach things, like, what? Stop it. You know, and now it's just it's like, she's been doing that the whole time.
It's funny how you see her through, like, as they say, a new pair of glasses, right?
100%.
Everything you see, people,
100%.
situations.
Well, the hardest thing for me, because I started getting inklings, was that everything I thought about how the world worked was wrong. And I came into the program with evidence. I mean, I was fairly successful. I had a business.
Right.
I had evidence. I had won trials. I had, people liked me. I had accolades and whatnot. And so I thought I knew what I was doing. And it turns out the whole way I thought things worked was just completely ass backwards. The whole concept of life on life's terms and surrender.
Yeah.
And
Well, here's one that you gave me, which was amazing, what you said, litigate with love.
Right.
Who thinks like that?
Well,
that's such a great, I get it, you know what I mean? But I've never heard that. I've never thought of that.
I couldn't keep doing it if I didn't do it that way.
Yeah, what a completely 180 approach to the way you did it before. And
it is.
And it's amazing.
Well, and these guys, the opposition is just people too. They're just trying to do a job,
Well, because I want to, we have a couple questions too, about that kind of stuff. And I want to say, what was amazing about you, which is so true, was exactly what you said. And that's why it struck me when you said that. And it stuck with me, litigate with love, because the way you approached me with love, such care, and I was crushed. I didn't know what to do. Yeah. You just don't know what to do. And you told me, you go, no, you're gonna need to do this. And you just kind of, I don't know, when the house burned down, I was just kind of like, you just kind of go into a hole and you go.
Well, we call it disaster fog. It's literally a fog. I can't tell you, like I
didn't want to ask for anything.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to go to the insurance. We just want to. You go, no.
You need to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. Asking for money is like my secret,
Yeah.
of the insurance companies. Yeah.
Because here's the other thing, but I want to go back to this too, was the way you handled us, because you're lost.
Yeah.
You're so lost. You don't know what to do.
You don't.
And me and my wife and my parents, and you came over and you were just so kind. And it was unusual for an attorney. I thought.
We get a bad rap.
Well, no, because I've had attorneys and you've been in litigations before. And they're like you're talking about. They're fucking badasses.
Yeah.
And we're going to fucking do this and we're going to get
right.
that. You didn't approach it that way.
Right.
You just said you're going to ask for this. Here's what's going to happen.
Right.
And you led me down this path.
Right.
That I made this video announcing that you were going to be on the show today. And I talked about, you don't know what you're going to do in a fire. You don't know. Nobody goes through a fire, right? And without you, I would have been completely lost. Yeah. And we're at the phase of building at
some
this
recovery,
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so so what would you say to people that,
Well, so what I've noticed, and I've done a shitload of disasters of all different kinds, people get stuck. And they're just paralyzed with fear.
Yes.
And they're in a system that they have no idea how it works. And you really need somebody informed, somebody educated to guide you through it, because you're not going to figure it out on yourself.
There's no way.
And what I commonly hear is, well, why do I need somebody? I've been with this insurance company for 30 years. And I paid them all these premiums, with the false belief that they're going to take care of them.
Yeah.
And they're not going to take care of them. They're there to save money. It's a for-profit business.
Well, you also said this to me. You said to me when you were telling me what you did, and I didn't know what you did at the time. And you go, I'm one of the old lions of this business. I've been doing this for 45 years.
Yeah.
And then you also said something that sparked you. You go, you just was talking one of our conversations. You go, I represented Aaron Brockovich.
Right.
And everybody knows who that is. Right. Then I go, holy shit. I go, this is for
Ed
real.
McMahon as well.
Oh, and Ed McMahon,
yeah,
really?
Yeah. And the Trump Organization.
Wow.
As well, yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, I've had a bunch of famous clients over the years. Yeah, and they're just as well. Actually, it's interesting. People of means struggle with disaster far more than people of more modest.
Why is that?
I think that they're used to being able to will things in the world and apply their will and force things.
Yeah.
And disasters and insurance just don't work like that.
Right.
You are not going to will. I mean, you're just going to make yourself bloody nuts.
Well, you told me something too to look out for. You basically said, well, there's buckets here and there.
Right.
Right. I remember you explained that to me, and I understood that. There's buckets of money.
Right.
And I remember one of the things you go, there's plants and trees. How many trees and plants do you have?
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know. You
Right.
know. And the other thing was gather photos and
Right.
video
Right.
and
all your stuff.
And I remember you said ask about the plants.
Right.
They're not going to tell you about it.
Right. Right.
And they didn't.
And they won't.
But once, I mean, you said our insurance company was very good the way that
They were
because you also said it was going to take. I remember one of the things you told me. You go, it's going to be 5 years.
right.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And the other thing you told me was go for it and build if you want to build.
Right.
Because things are going to get backed up.
Right.
What's the difference between the Lahaina fire, let's say, and the Palisades or
The Eaton. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very, very similar. And the advice that I constantly give people is, nobody wants to start planning their recovery until they know what they're going to get.
Right.
Right. And so
Yes.
so that stops them, and they don't understand that you're going to get more by making your plan, and then allowing the insurance industry to support you in it.
Because it is scary. Because you told me that
Right.
you go, do you want to build? And I said, yeah, of course. We, that's where we want to live.
Right.
And you said, go for it. Do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And you're kind of going on this sort of blind faith that you're going to it's going to work out.
Well, you're believing that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Now
And I
after,
do.
But and after all that crazy half an hour of shit you just told us, I don't know. I'm not going to build.
It's because of that half an hour of shit that I just told you and I'm still sitting here and I'm not dead yet.
No, but it's true. So we started, we jumped in right away.
Right.
Acting as if,
Right.
going on what you said.
Right.
And we're in a really good position. We're in a position like
That's great to hear.
we're just doing it, you
Yeah.
know? And the funny thing is, I think, is just simply that, like, to not know and have someone like you guide you. And I even called you on certain things, like, what do I say here? I don't
Right.
know what to say because I don't know how to word things to an insurance company.
Right. Right.
And you helped me with that.
I do. That's what I've been doing in the Palisades and Eaton fires primarily, like for 15 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right, because the Palisades, Jim and I were talking. You had a
Yeah.
question about the insurance companies, right, Jim?
Yeah, there's talk of insurance companies just pulling out
Yeah.
of the area.
Yeah.
How does that work? I mean, what do you do if you?
Yeah.
And they can just do that?
Sort of. So the public relations, the stories that are reported about the insurance industry and how rough it is out here for them are greatly exaggerated and honestly bullshit. I mean, I've seen this in Florida after the hurricanes. Companies do pull out. Some of it has to do with disaster risk. Some of it just has to do with retrenching in their underwriting departments, and they decide to go in a different direction. But wherever there's a market, it's going to get filled, and there's going to be insurance that fills it. And what's published a lot is about there's admitted and non-admitted carriers. Admitted carriers are supported by the California Fair Plan, and they have to comply with all the rules. But there's a whole group of carriers that are not admitted that don't, and maybe they're not as well capitalized. In point of fact, all the admitted carriers have non-admitted subsidiaries. And so when the admitted carriers pull out, the non-admitted subsidiaries, which charge higher premiums, stay. And so, like, State Farm has a non-admitted subsidiary. It's not going anywhere.
Right.
It's just money. By pulling the brand out, they can charge more.
Right.
They can use it as an excuse to charge more because you got to have insurance if you want to, get a loan, if you want to basically live. Everybody thinks you got to have insurance. So,
What do you think like, because the Lahaina.
I'm sorry to answer.
Oh, sorry.
So to answer your question, there will always be insurance.
Okay.
It's not like that's not going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah. Somebody will serve it, and Florida is a great example of that. Allstate pulled out of Florida. There was still plenty of coverage. So, and then there's the California Fair Plan, which is the insurance of last resort, and it's funded by all the admitted carriers. And so people worry about California Fair Plan running out of money. It's never going to run out of money. There's plenty of money because all the admitted carriers, Allstate, State Farm, Travelers, Safeco, Liberty, they're all tipping in and paying it, and that's not going anywhere. So,
Mike, I have a question. What's the like we talked about? I remember with the Lahaina fires before anything was even investigated.
right,
You said you go 99%. It's gonna be there's gonna be somebody to blame for that.
right,
Somebody started the fire.
right,
And I was like, wow, obviously with your experience.
right,
And that turned out to be the case.
Right.
Hawaiian Electric and
right.
the county and all these people were.
State,
Yeah.
yep.
What's going on with the Palisades fire? What about that?
Yeah. So I have a number of sources. One is the guy that represents 190 insurance companies that are paying out these billions of dollars. And they're the guys, typically the insurance industry does what we call the cause and origin investigation because they have the resources to do it. And they were locked out of the origin site of the Palisades fire up until like the third week of March because ATF had the whole scene locked down and wouldn't let anybody in. And the speculation is that if ATF is taking that long to investigate something, because it does not take that long to investigate,
Right.
since January 7th to, mid-March,
Yeah.
that there's a municipal responsibility. And so,
What does that mean exactly?
well, that one of the municipalities, whether it be LADWP, Los Angeles Fire Department, Los Angeles City Fire Department, Los Angeles County Fire Department, one of them is responsible.
Yeah.
Turns out that it seems the settled opinion is that the ignition of the Palisades fire was a rekindling of the fireworks event that happened on January 1st.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and which means that it was not properly extinguished. But the real problem is that when the firefighters went to stop the rekindling, they got there in plenty of time, and they almost had the fire out, except that somebody at LADWP de-energized the electrical system up in the upper highlands where it started, and the pumps stopped pumping, and there was no more water. They ran out of water just before they struck it. Yeah.
So
Yeah, and had they and there was no need to de-energize the electrical system because all the electric wires are underground up there because it's fairly new construction, and so somebody overreacted and shut down the entire grid, and that turned the pumps off, and the water that was there could not be deployed.
No
Exactly
shit.
right. Yeah.
Is that common knowledge? I mean, is that out now?
I don't know that it's common knowledge.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah. Well, there's litigation pending versus LADWP. We're about to mount some ourselves.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Additionally, there's a second source of ignition because the thing that never made sense to me was how does it start in the upper highlands, like
Right.
almost in Topanga,
Yeah.
and get to the village, get to
Right.
downtown? How does it do that? Everybody's talking about the winds and all that, and I'm like, bullshit. There's
Right.
too many canyons. It's just too far. Turns out there's a second ignition source. There was a set of LADWP wiring and transformers that supposedly were decommissioned. LADWP originally said these were decommissioned. There's no way they contributed.
Yeah.
Well, the insurance industry investigated and said, no, this is your origin source. And they've now reversed course and said that, oh, well, yeah, they were live on the other day of the fire, and they were not decommissioned. They were not de-energized. They were energized, and they were and that was on El Medio and roughly at sunset.
So if you're somebody in the fires, the Palisades fires,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what do they do? Like, what do you think they do at this point?
Yeah. Well,
what would
there's
someone like me do?
There's a process. First thing is to collect your insurance benefits, right?
Right.
Second thing then is to sue the third parties responsible for any uninsured losses that you have. The legal industry has just been an embarrassment to me because of all the lawyers that have come in, lawyers from other states.
Yeah.
lawyers that have never handled a wildfire case in their lives.
Oh,
You know, a lot
yeah.
of PI
They're
lawyers
just trying to climb on.
They're all not. Yeah, I mean, it's disgusting. The marketing, and what the reason it's changed, like from the Woolsey fire back in 2018, is hedge funds have now started funding the law firms and the marketing efforts, and yeah, and so huge amounts of money have come in, and basically that's why you've got so much disgusting competition. You know, you should pick a wildfire lawyer that actually has done a wildfire.
Right.
Seems like a good idea. You should also pick a wildfire lawyer that
So don't go with like Accidentes or something like that.
right, or with Morgan and Morgan, right?
Jacoby and Myers.
Well, yeah, they're all in the wildfire business now.
Are they?
They all are. It's amazing. And there's two different ways to handle the cases. So there's the lawyers that come in and sign up 1,000 cases and whatnot. Those guys are not going to be able to. You're just going to become a number if you go with those guys.
Right, right.
And those guys really don't have the experience in quantifying your property damage. I would say you need somebody that's got a background like mine, where you're used to quantifying property damage as a regular part of your business, and so you're going to consider everything. And so, you also want, if you want personalized treatment, you need to hire somebody that's actually where you can call your lawyer. With those firms that hire 1,000 or sign 1,000 people, you're never going to talk to a lawyer.
Yeah.
Ever. You're going to talk to a paralegal. You're going to talk to a law
I talk to you all the time.
Well, right. Exactly. Because we do it the old-fashioned way, one person at a time.
Right.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this too, because what's the difference? Okay, so I know with Lahaina, all me and my neighbors, we had all this testing had to be done.
Right.
Everything had to be excavated 8
Right.
inches down.
Right.
And all
Same
the
thing.
testing. Is that the same thing happening?
100%.
But I know that in Lahaina there was no building, or all these things had to be passed. But I heard of people already getting ready to build in Palisades. Is that right? Like once you've cleared your lot, I've heard that you can just get going and building.
You can. It's not advisable.
Right, because there's so much toxins.
It's
right?
a shit show up there.
Yeah.
You want to. You're gonna
I've just had friends.
You're
ask
gonna
me.
put clean stuff. Well, that's the thing I don't
Yeah.
understand is everybody's got this sense of urgency.
Right.
Like hurrying is going to help.
Yeah.
We're still early days of this.
So
It's
early.
only been 3 months.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And people are trying to get back. You want to go move into a construction site.
Yeah.
In the Woolsey fire, I had people who cleaned their house. Their insurance company paid for the first cleaning, and then they had to clean it like 4 more times because
Right.
it got recontaminated from all the demolition debris, from all the soot and ash, just the ambient sitting around. And when the wind would blow, it would blow.
That's right. Even my buddy Christian, who
Yeah.
in Lahaina, he had his place. His place didn't burn down.
Right.
But it just got slammed with toxins and
100%.
soot and smoke.
Right.
He goes, I wish it burned down, because the process he had to go through.
Well, and it's probably still not clean. The insurance companies will not pay to properly clean these people's places.
Right.
And so people are doing these remediations that are okay, but the house is going to be dirty. When you go to sell your house and the buyer wants to do an environmental investigation, they're gonna come up with positive samples, and they're going to use it to reduce your sale price.
Wow. I got one question. We're almost out of time. This is you'll see. I don't think we know this person, but it was an interesting question. You'll get it. Wait a minute. Hold on. I don't have my glasses on. How many? It was. Here it is. All right. This is from Mint Dolphin in Santa Barbara.
All right.
This is perfect for you. How did he know? How many acceptance prayers do you need to do before contacting an insurance company?
Wow.
Isn't that funny?
That is beautiful.
This guy,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
That is beautiful. Yeah.
What do you think?
I think as many as you can.
Right.
Before, after, during, and after. Yeah.
Oh,
is what
Mike,
I-
this
is what
is
I
so
say.
great having you
Well,
here.
thank you. Yeah.
And everything that you've done for me, and if you're out there, hopefully, and you're you watched the show. I hope you got something out of this. I really wanted to do that. I wanted to somehow, get people some sort of information and know that if you're in that situation, it'll work out.
It will.
I think it'll totally work out,
will.
especially if you get someone like you. And,
There will be recovery.
yeah.
It just,
You can't see it when you're in it, but
can't.
as time passes,
Very scary. Yeah.
For me, mine was a journey of 20 years, and that's how I look at it. That was that journey.
Right.
I'm on a brand new one, and thank you for helping me get there. Really appreciate it. Love you, buddy.
I love you too.
All right.
Thank you.
Another savory conversation on Unsavory Fellow.
Aloha.